Hello, and welcome back to Read the World. My name is Derek Main, and I review translated literature. So I am back outside today. As you can see, I am sweating and am very gross. I apologize for that. And also you'll see and hear, or not see, but you will hear some background noise. Obviously we're all cooped up, so I have limited places I can record, but after my last recording, where I did Holiday Heart, I got reached out to by, a reaching occurred from a modeling agency that was like, hey, we really like this look. Like, you're looking pretty, they like, So I don't even read the books anymore. This is like just B-roll, basically, for an eventual modeling contract. Okay, so today I am going to review Little Eyes from Samatha Schweblin, author of Fever Dream. Fantastic book. This is Megan McDowell, right? Yes, Megan McDowell is the translator, one of the best translators literally in the world. And this is a Riverhead books, which is important in this case because I'm going to talk about publishing actually for a minute, and major publishing. And Riverhead Books is an imprint of Penguin Random House. Imprints are funny, right? To me. And the reason imprints are funny is because imprints kind of send me a signal that a large publishing company knows that they don't have an aesthetic. Okay? So what they then do is they have imprints, and they decide this imprint will have an aesthetic. All right, why am I bringing this up? Well, the first thing I want to say about Little Eyes, and this is a great book, and I promise that I am going to spend time talking about the substance of the book, if you'll give me this 2-minute rant. This is the American cover, okay? This is the UK, Australia, English-speaking besides US cover. As you can see, it is a lot cooler, and if you've read the text, you can see that it is much more in line with the text. This, nice cover. I don't want to disparage the graphic designer. I'm talking about specific for this book, okay? It's a nice design, but the point being, it does not tell us anything about the book, whereas that cover does, okay? Let's switch gears. This, Kentucky, is how it was originally published in Spanish, okay? Kentucky is a name that makes far more sense once you read this book. The main characters are called Kentuckys. The change to Little Eyes doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Why not keep the name Kentucky? It looks cool. And why not keep this awesome cover? If not that one, this one. But instead in America we have this one, and I wonder what their marketing plan is for this. What are they selling Little Eyes as? Little Eyes is a creepy psychological techno thriller. I think that's a good way to put it. Okay, it's got a touch of science fiction for sure, and essentially it is a philosophical text. It's dealing with a philosophical question that is very germane to our modern life, and doing so through a kind of a new made-up technology. Well, that to me is the definition of great sci-fi, okay? And I think those other two covers and ways of marketing the book do a much better job of expressing that. Whereas this to me expresses more just like local book club aesthetic. Not right in my opinion for this book. Anyway, I just say that all to mean like there's a reason I prefer independent, nonprofit, or small or university presses. And it has to do with the fact that they have an aesthetic. They make choices. There's an artistic vision. And these big, large publishing houses, another stupid complaint, but I'm going to make it anyway. The pages, it's like so cheap. I get so many regular, I've subscribed to Charco, Deep Vellum, Open Letter, Sublunary Press, which is like the tiniest you can get, right? And I'm missing a subscription somewhere, but regardless, and then of course I'm constantly buying and getting a bunch of stuff, even New Directions, which is like a huge heavyweight in kind of hard to call them independent press, but they are, right? I mean, even there is an artistic beauty and quality to the object and the text itself, whereas Riverhead Books here, a subsidiary of Penguin Random House, makes you feel like it's just sort of the medium. This is the way in which, you know, you are going to consume this thing. And what's in this thing is a beautiful, tremendous, trembling thing. But I wish they paid more attention to the physical object that us as book lovers, the one actually spending the money on it, that we care about. End of rant. Brief plot recap. So, since this is science fiction and thriller and techno, you know there's going to be a point where I have to stop saying what is what because it'll give away, right? Well, these stories are about Kentuckys, and Kentuckys are a new technology. They can be pandas, bunnies, but they're little fluffy things, okay? And they scuttle around on the floor, and they have eyes and can sort of, in the way that they can, rudimentary communication with their owner. Their owners are called keepers. The Kentucky is controlled by a dweller. And so we'll get to that distinction in a minute, but so there are two sides to this, two human sides, real people on both sides of that. And so the story is really just a compendium of different ways that keepers and dwellers interact with this new technology, how it changes them, some beautiful things that occur with it, some horrific things that occur with it, unintended consequences, basically the whole gamut of humanity that would exist when a new technology like this would bring about philosophical questions. Okay, so the different stories. I want to talk about this briefly because the fact that there are so many different stories, so each chapter you bounce back to a different one, and maybe, let's guess 8 in total or something, right? This is both good and bad as it relates to the text. It is good in that it brings about every potential, well, not every, but many potential philosophical questions that come from the ultimate question of, would you rather be a keeper or a dweller? That's, to me, that's the question of the text, okay? And when you get all these different points of views, you get to see all the different ways and things you might not have thought about in terms of both sides, okay? The negative of that is it can feel like a fragment, and it can feel like a collection of short stories about Kentuckys sort of meshed together as opposed to a complete sort of work that circles back into itself. Now for me, someone where plot is sometimes and many times secondary, and I can engage with any kind of text, and I like stuff that is as experimental and avant-garde as it gets, but this isn't trying to be that, okay? So when I engage with a text, I'm going to engage with it on its terms. And this is a science fiction book. You know, this is literary science fiction, but that's what it is. And so the fact that it is fragmented like that, to me, takes away a little bit, and just a little bit, but a little bit of the power of the novel. So while I really liked this, I liked the writing, it's not, to me, up to the level of something like Fever Dream, which is actually the only one that others of hers have read. I need to get her short story collection. So much so that I couldn't find my copy of Fever Dream. You see all the sweat happening? I'm so sorry. Harvard Bookstore was having a big warehouse sale, and they Fever Dream was there, so I bought it. It's going to come here in a couple weeks. I'm actually going to reread it and review it because this writer is one of the best writers going today. I mean, I think she's from Argentina. Me and Michael talked about. I want to make sure I'm right about Argentina because that would be super embarrassing. No. Oh, yes, Buenos Aires. She lives in Berlin. She's from Buenos Aires. Okay. So, me and Michael from Knowledge Lost were talking recently about just like the incredible women Latin American writers right now, and she is absolutely one, you know, Samatha Schweblin. So I engage with her text seriously. You know, I think I would treat this differently were it a debut novel. I would be like, wow. This is a huge new voice. But this is a very established author, so I am going to take my critique seriously. My critique is that the disparate stories offer us the chance to engage with the philosophical question in a more meaningful and complete way, but at the same time, it does hinder the novel as a whole. Okay, so let's get to that interesting philosophical question. Would you rather be a keeper or a dweller? That's the question. All right, I am going to actually do two quotes first that are about the keeper or dweller from the text and use that as my jumping off point to discuss what the question is. All right, page 100. And you'll get a good sense of the style of writing and translating as well. As I said, Megan McDowell is tremendous. I think I first came across her through Alejandro Zambros' work, if I said that at all right. One of my favorite contemporary writers. Still weighing the pros and cons of being a keeper or a dweller never left either side a clear winner. On one hand, few people were willing to expose their private lives to a stranger, and everyone loves to watch, to be a voyeur into someone else's life. But then, buying a device meant obtaining something tangible that occupied a real place in the house. A Kentucky was the closest thing on the market to having a household robot. Okay, so before I go into this next section on Keeper Dweller, do you kind of get the sense there of the friction between the question? You're going to get that creepy peeping Tom aspect if you're a dweller, because you're going to see into someone else's life, and you don't have to go any further than our global obsession with reality television, the way that news has become reality television, in fact, the way that politics have become reality television, that we just want to watch. And even if it's the world burning, and even if it is suffering, or even if it is frustrating, we still just want to watch. And that gives us, at times, and myself included, a feeling of moral superiority, right? At least we're not that bad. And at times it gives us a feeling of longing, right? Myself included. Oh, I wish I could be there, you know. And none of this is new. We understand this from, you know, the way that social media as well has turned our lives into comparative lives, you know. And of course, plenty of people complain about this. Listen, this is just the reality. And how you deal with that reality is who you are. It's how you're going to engage with the world around you, the world as you found it. And the Kentuckys in this book are the reality. And so anyway, all right, one way is you're the dweller, you're watching. The keeper gets the tangible object. So the keeper has much more control. The keeper decides when and, crucially, if to charge the dweller, okay? The keeper can commit a murder, an expensive one, because these things are not cheap, but the keeper is in control in that sense. Of course, it's a false sense of control, because once you have exposed yourself naked to someone, you don't know who's on the other end, and neither does the other. But of course, it is much scarier to do this part, to tell you what I think, but not know who you are or how you're going to respond to that, than it is for me to watch BookTube. Because I can just change the channel. Okay, yeah. I took that metaphor too far, I realized. Like, in the middle of the metaphor, I was like, that doesn't work at all. But, okay. Let's go to page 114. I'm actually going to keep this in, probably. Why not? Let's roll with it. Dwelling in a Kentucky, thought Alina, was a much more intense experience. If being anonymous online was the maximum freedom for any user, and what's more, almost impossible, how would it feel then to be an anonymous actor in someone else's life? Hopefully the crappy metaphor that I just failed at using is actually answered in the text, because that's the best way to do it, honestly. She's much better at this than I am. And that being anonymous, right? So dwelling, you are anonymous. You are not seen, okay? Your only interaction you do control, because you control the movements of the Kentucky. You control when to be awake, so when to be literally staring at the tablet for Kentucky. A lot of keepers would be annoyed because it ends up they get a dweller in a different time zone. So in actuality, like, they need to change their sleep schedule in order to interact with their dweller, with their Kentucky. So those are the questions. Do I have an answer? My answer would be neither. I mean, I'd like to think, although as you see here in my need for attention and validation by doing booktube, by being active in social media, certainly I do want to engage with an outside world, even if anonymous. But I'm not anonymous here. My name's Derek Main. You're not anonymous in the comments. I see you, we respond back and forth. You know, we're not anonymous on Twitter. I use my real name there. People there I know and I develop relationships. The Kentucky is quite a bit different. So in some ways it definitely invites us to make that comparison to our modern life. In other ways it's a next step. And I think it's asking you where you would find yourself in that next step. And I'd like to think that I'd choose neither the dweller or the keeper and just stay away. So, why wouldn't you stay away? My last section is page 40. It's very brief, and what it is it's kind of a brief justification. This is by an older woman whose son gives her a Kentucky, so she is a keeper. I may be crazy, but at least I'm modern, she thought. She had 2 lives, and that was much better than barely having one and limping around in free fall. So there's your justification. I may be crazy, this may be insane, but at least I'm modern. And I thought that really touched on something that we all experience as we engage with new technology, where we do feel a little crazy and it changes us. But it feels like, well, we're all doing it at the same time, and this is of the moment. So there is a collective psychosis and a collective change of which I am a part. And that staves off loneliness. So let's go back to the question of the keeper and the dweller. And my response saying, I would want neither. Well, what if I chose neither, but 80% of the world chose to be either a keeper or dweller? So now I'm a Luddite? Certainly not 80% of the world are on social media, and yet I am, despite the drawbacks and the downfalls. So could I really choose keeper or dweller if I was in that position? Could I really choose neither, in other words? Or would I force myself to choose from that justification? Because this is crazy, at least I'm modern. Well, these are the brief thoughts that I kind of had reading Little Lies. An interesting, good book, a quick read, excellent translation by Megan McDowell. Major complaints about the covers, as I started off with. But that's kind of it. I think that sort of wraps it up. I really appreciate you watching. Comment, let me know what you think. This was not as gung-ho a review as I like to do. So what did I miss in the text? Be good to folks.